We are taught of grand ideals, of loyalty and virtue defining the medieval age, but the true bedrock of power was often far more transactional. For centuries, history has presented a curated narrative, often overlooking the inconvenient truths that sculpted empires and decided fates. The story we commonly receive speaks of chivalry and unwavering allegiance. Yet a colder reality existed beneath the surface, one built on a very different foundation. From the fracturing Roman Empire, we can observe the early stages. Violence was outsourced, and the raw allure of profit from raids began to cohere into a brutal new profession. By the 7th and 8th centuries, a distinct pattern emerged. Italian and Burgundian states, desperate for security against their own untrained citizen armies, were already hiring local nobles and even Saracens. These were clearly not the romanticized knights of legend. They were specialists, their experience a prized commodity, sought out by larger states long before national conscription became a reality. This was far more than mere opportunism. It systematically evolved into a sophisticated, ruthless business model. From the 13th to 16th centuries, mercenary bands transformed into highly professional enterprises, their services in relentless demand during major conflicts. The Hundred Years' War and the Italian Wars, for instance, became battlegrounds where these companies not only survived but thrived. Italian city-states, veritable financial powerhouses brimming with capital from banking and crafting guilds, proved particularly adept at securing foreign experts, like the infamous John Hawkwood. The payment structures themselves were telling. Advances were common for short, seasonal tours. This practice fostered a culture where companies, such as the Scottish Mercenaries, served opposing sides, fighting for both England and France in the 1300s. Religious differences, too, were routinely disregarded, with North African Saracens hired by Christians and Christian mercenaries by Muslim rulers. Yet, despite their undeniable indispensability on the battlefield, these figures faced profound denigration. Political and religious leaders scorned them openly, accusing them of prioritizing money over what they termed chivalric or Christian values. Even Niccolò Machiavelli, a keen observer of power dynamics, criticized them for lacking warrior virtue and loyalty. One must ask, was this a genuine moral outrage, or a more convenient narrative designed to dismiss those who so clearly exposed the true, transactional nature of power itself? Because, despite all the criticism and moralizing, these independent companies persisted. They were relentlessly fueled by the prevailing economic drivers of the era, the relentless accumulation of wealth, and the perpetual state of warfare that defined much of the medieval landscape. Companies like Hawkwood's White Company, known for its efficiency, or the Navarrese Company, notable for its 1376 Duras expedition and displacing Catalans from Athens, carved their names into history, as did Werner von der Slingen's Great Company, which fragmented after its leaders' deaths in the 1350s and 1360s. The age of these freelance armies eventually waned, but it never truly disappeared. From the 15th century onward, centralized states like France and England began to forge loyal, state-backed troops. They diligently refined logistics, formalized training, and in doing so, diminished the immediate need for external muscle. The end of Crusader states and the rise of the Ottoman Empire further reduced the overall demand for these independent warriors. This significant shift, however, didn't usher in an era of peace. It merely transformed unemployed soldiers, like the 15th century Accorchers, into new and visible societal threats. By the 18th century, the expansion of colonial empires had largely marginalized them, pushing many into the fringes, often into piracy. The 19th century's burgeoning national armies then cemented their image as purely amoral figures, relegated to a historical footnote to be scorned. But the shadow never truly lifted. The profession merely mutated, persisting in gun smuggling and colonial wars. It bypassed the 1977 Geneva Convention ban, only to ultimately give rise to the modern private military company. A constant, brutal whisper through the ages that some truths, however uncomfortable, simply refuse to die. The question isn't whether this phenomenon existed. The more profound question is why we are still so hesitant to acknowledge its enduring presence.